Thank you. Yeah, thanks for catching that.
Okay.
All right, so first things first, I think we should start by taking a look at what hypothesis even is and what it looks like to annotate with hypothesis. So I'm going to pop out of my slide deck into my own little Blackboard course here. So hypothesis is already installed for you in Blackboard. You don't have to do any additional installation steps to use it. You just have to set up an assignment linked to hypothesis. So in Blackboard, if I click on this assignment I have here, we do see many professors in the humanities using hypothesis. So this particular example comes from like an English course. So this is a poetry example. So on the left here, we have a poem, Wild Geese by Mary Oliver, being read in this pretend class here. And then on the right, you have hypothesis. Hypothesis is an annotation sidebar that just sits on top of readings in your course. So students can expand it to make it larger or smaller. And on the left, they're just going to have whatever reading you have assigned to them. With hypothesis, you can have students read anything that's on the web or any document that exists as a PDF. So you see that on the left, there's sentences highlighted in yellow. All of the yellow highlights correspond to an annotation made on the right-hand side of the screen by a student. So when I clicked on that annotation, it actually filtered over for me on the right here, the exact comment that a student made on that line of the poem. You can see below there's some replies from other students because students can have a threaded discussion with hypothesis. If I click show all, it'll just show me all the annotations that have been made on the poem. And you can see each comment above it, there'll be some words that are italicized with this little blue bar that shows you the line of the poem that the student has annotated. If I click on it on the left side, it will highlight in blue that exact bit of text. So what this does is it allows you to really anchor that student's comment back to the exact place in the text where they've made their comment. You can also see here, this student has used a tag, a speaker tag. So you can certainly tag your annotations and track a wide variety of topics or questions as students are annotating. So this is designed to be one of the easiest tech tools that students will use. It should be pretty self-explanatory. So what you do is, in order to annotate, you're just going to take your mouse or your finger and you're going to select some text within the document. When you select some text, you're going to see two options. You can either annotate the text or you can highlight. One thing to note is that highlighting is always going to be a private thing. So any highlights you make are only going to be visible to you. Whereas an annotation will display to everybody in your class. So if I click annotate, on the right side here, I then get a text box. I'm going to type my annotation. Notice that the author uses examples of things you don't have to do. I could tag any annotation here by just typing any word and hitting enter. Like if I had a question, I can type question and hit enter, and that's going to create a question tag. For example, if my instructor had asked me to tag my questions, this might be one way to easily kind of search for those unanswered questions. And then when I'm ready, what you do is you click post. And what that does is it makes my annotation public. So everyone in the class can now see my annotation. Students can reply to annotations by clicking this little arrow here, and then this is going to create a threaded discussion. You could also go in and edit or delete annotations that I have made as a student. So again, the idea is that this is a very simple tool for students to use with only 3 instructions for how to get started. And then as an instructor, I have a grading bar at the top because I configured this particular assignment to be worth points for a grade, which is totally up to you, can either be a graded or not graded assignment. So popping back over into my slide deck here, we like to say that there are 3 tenets of hypothesis, or 3 things that really accomplishes in your classroom with students. When it comes to students reading, social annotation helps make student reading more active, more visible, and more social. I'm going to briefly touch on each of these things and then invite everybody to practice some annotation together. So first of all, social annotation is going to encourage students to slow down in their reading, and this is why we say it helps make reading more active. It encourages students to interact more deeply with the content that's been assigned to them. They're interacting not just with the text, but with each other and potentially with you as the instructor surrounding that text as well. Hypothesis is also going to help make it more obvious to you whether or not students are actually completing the reading that you've assigned. For example, if you assign them a certain number of annotations and say, you must, have these annotations at the beginning, middle, and end of the document, then you can clearly see through the comments students are making that they are in fact engaging with the entirety of the reading. It also helps illuminate for you places where students are confused or maybe aren't quite getting the content in the way that you had anticipated. So it can help kind of prompt where your class discussions or lectures need to go, because sometimes you can review those annotations prior to class starting and have an idea of the questions your students have prior to even coming to class. And then the third thing Hypothesis does is it makes reading a social experience, and it takes the content, the reading content of your course, and turns that into a new place where students can actually interact with each other, ask each other questions, have visibility into each other's reactions, which can be very powerful, especially with more challenging texts. Sometimes students, as you're reading independently, you might think you're the only one who feels very confused about a challenging reading. With a tool like Hypothesis, students can see like, oh, they're not the only one who's not quite grasping this one thing. It can also help students to kind of see or visualize reading strategies that other students are using, or the kinds of reactions other students are having, to help them kind of envision what deeper and more active reading can look like. All right, so in Blackboard, a few notes about the integration there. Students do not have to log into Hypothesis or create an account. It's just automatically they're passed through to the tool with just their first and last name displaying there for them. As I briefly mentioned, you can also grade annotations via this grading bar at the top. This is designed to make that experience very quick and seamless for you. And there are group sets that you can use if you want to split your students into smaller groups and have them just read and discuss in groups of 4 or 5 instead of 20 or 30. Just know that that is an option as well. Okay, I also wanted to briefly touch on accessibility. There are some resources here. Hypothesis is WCAG 2.0 AA accessible. And we do work with especially Mac screen readers and more. And if you're interested in learning more about our approach to accessibility, all of these are clickable links here for more information on that. There's also some resources in here on PDFs. If you're using a PDF, you just want to make sure it's selectable. So Hypothesis works with any PDF that has selectable text, meaning that when you highlight some text on the page, you're able to copy and paste that and have that text actually be readable. If you run into any issues with that, we have a resource here on how to add an OCR layer to any PDF and make it even more accessible for students. OCR stands for optical character recognition, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to spend too much time on that today, but just know that there are some resources in the deck here for you on that front. Okay, without further ado, I would like to invite everybody to this Blackboard course that I believe Denise has already granted everyone access to. Does everybody already have the URL to get to this course?
It's in our Blackboard course listings. It's available on the net right now. Perfect.
Okay. So what you're going to do once you're in the course, if you click on Spring 23 Unworkshops, there's a folder for our workshop right here. In the folder at the very bottom, oh wait, oh no, it's not at the bottom, I'm sorry. It's actually second from the top. What I would like to invite everybody to click on is this annotation practice assignment. You'll see the hypothesis icon in red to the left, and there's some example instructions here. I'll pause for a moment just to make sure everybody has time to get here, and let me know if anyone has trouble. So again, if you're just navigating there, I got there by clicking Spring 23 Unworkshops. And then within that section, there's a folder for Tuesday, January 9th, Hypothesis Workshop. Within that folder, this is the second assignment, or the second item from the top, I should say. The annotation practice assignment. And when you click on that, it will actually load a reading in a brand new browser tab. We always do advise that you configure these to load in their own tab. For accessibility reasons, this just gives you maximum real estate and makes reading and annotating a lot easier. And I see someone has already annotated. Fantastic. Lovely, perfect. So once you click on that tab to open the reading, what I would encourage everybody to do is just play around with it. Try highlighting something. When you highlight, you'll see those two options to either annotate or highlight. Again, when you click annotate, you can type whatever you want. It does not need to be a meaningful annotation. I love this word. I would encourage folks to try adding at least one annotation and one reply, if not more than that. And please let me know if any questions come up. As folks are in there, I'll kind of highlight some additional features as you go. And I see in the top of my screen, there's now a circle with a down arrow, which tells me that a new annotation is on this page.
This comment and text on Google Docs.
I'm going to load that. Great.
Oh, the best thing about this.
Hey, Jessica.
Yes.
What would, my students don't use page notes because I don't know what the advantage of a page note over annotation would be. Other than I use the page note in my peer reviews so that peer review students, the writing center, everybody uses annotations, and then I kind of do my comments in page notes. But my overall question is, what are page notes and how do we use them?
Great question. Yeah, thanks for asking that. So a page note is, for those who are new to Hypothesis, it's an annotation that's not linked to any specific piece of text on the page. You can see them kind of right here next to annotations. It's just a different tab for page notes. And how do you make a page note? Well, you're going to click on this little icon that looks like a sticky note, kind of in the upper right corner here, or upper left corner of the sidebar. A page note can be useful if you're wanting students to, for example, reflect on one very specific question that you might have for them that does not link to any particular moment in the text. For example, you could do something like, please read the following article, and then use a page note to let me know what you think the author's thesis actually is in one sentence. Something where you're wanting students to just tell you something that's kind of a one-off that, again, isn't going to be associated with a particular piece of the text. I've also heard instructors using it, I think you mentioned this, to post their own instructions to students, like, please annotate the following article and make 4 annotations. 2 of them must be questions and 1 must be a reply, or something like that, because that will always just kind of live right there in an easily acceptable or accessible place. This is a page note.
Right, because I usually put the instructions on the outside of the hypothesis within the module in Blackboard, and then they flip back and forth. Yeah, okay, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely know people who use page notes for instructions. I also know of some instructors that will post their instructions as an actual annotation, like they'll annotate the title.
Yeah.
And then turn that into their instructions, because it will always live at the top of the list of annotations. So whatever works best for you, I mean, that's great.
Another thing to do is to seed the document itself with questions. If you just don't want to have the discussion start cold without your help, after you post it, but before you tell your students about it, you drop 3 questions somewhere in the document.
Oh, so that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So they can either respond to your questions, or if they've got new ones, add it there.
Awesome, love it. Yeah.
Yep, that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, so you could plant the So I'm having them interact 3 or 4 times, and you could just plant the interactions within.
Yeah, I mean, you can either require them to respond to you or just simply say that's an option if nothing inspires you already.
Yeah. Jessica, what about tags? I've never used them before.
Yeah, so tags are, the possibilities are potentially endless because you can make whatever tags you want. So if I go in here, anything you type in here and hit enter for will become a tag. So I know I just talked to an instructor last week who actually he asked his students to tag their annotations with his name if they had a question that was specifically for him. That way he could just go up here to the top, use the search bar to search for his own name, and then that would filter out and easily show him, okay, these are all the questions that students had specifically for me. And then I think what he would do is actually prior to his lecture, those would be the questions that he would pull into his lecture.
Cool.
That's just one example. You can also use tags if you're having students read multiple hypothesis readings, but they're tracking like a theme or a certain subject across multiple readings. Like let's say I was teaching my example poetry class. I could say have students track usage of metaphors. Like anytime you find a metaphor, please annotate and tell us what that, what is this metaphor adding to the poem? Why do you think the author chose this particular type of metaphor? Tag it with a metaphor tag. And then what you can actually do, we have this feature called the notebook. If you click on your username in the upper right corner and click open notebook, it brings you to this kind of funky page where it will show every annotation that's ever been made in your entire course.
Wow.
But you can like Control F here and kind of search for tags. You can see every time a tag has been used in your course. Students can also filter down and like look at all of their own annotations that they've ever made and then see what tags they used or find other students using those tags. There's all sorts of possibilities, and it really does depend on kind of like what themes are you asking students to track. That can usually be a good starting point for tags.
Okay, so that's perfect for me. So I assign one of these each week as they're reading, and I want them to answer 3 or 4 specific questions. So what I could have them do is they could use the tag to say, this is my answer to the first question. This is my answer to.
Totally. Yeah, that's great.
That's what I'm gonna start doing. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions? I've been dominating the floor. My apologies. How dare you?
Jessica, can the tag be more than one word, or is the tag usually just one word?
I think it can be multiple words. Here we can test it. Like this is a tag. Yeah, it can be a multi-word tag. Yeah, what other questions do folks have?
So I have a concern about this as it relates to like the social nature of the interaction, because the comments earlier were active and social and students seeing what other students are doing. And if I'm asking my students to highlight and note, the thesis statement or the research puzzle or the research question, one of the problems that we have with discussion boards is that they just turn into an echo chamber and parrot each other. So I'm a little concerned with all of my students being able to see what one student says and then just following off of that. Is that a legit concern in this environment?
Absolutely.
How would we deal with it?
It's a question for Jessica. How could you hide one particular tag?
Hide a particular tag? Can you
Well,
tell me more about that? Why would you want to hide one, for example?
So Steve was concerned that, for example, he's asking them to identify the thesis statement. I'm a historian, he's a political science major, so I'm talking in my terms that I understand. So essentially, identify the thesis statement, but his concern is that once one student does it, everybody else already knows what the answer is.
I see.
So is there anywhere to hide like one tag from everybody else would be my thought, but I don't know, is that kind of.
I mean, Jonathan's suggestion a minute ago was to break every student into a category.
Actually, when you phrase it that way, I have another suggestion. And I'm sorry to go all meta for just a second before I get to the suggestion. We're now sort of in the one document, lots of students paradigm. But one of the wonders of hypothesis is it doesn't have to be one document, lots of students. You could actually have one document, one student if you wanted to.
You can. Yeah.
So I mean, just imagine where, I mean, it's a little more posting for you. But honestly, when we get to it, it takes, once you know how to do it, it takes like 15 seconds to put up a hypothesis assignment when you know how to do it.
So just be,
So you could literally have one document for every single student in your class. And obviously, we don't have 100-person classes at this university.
Sure.
So doing that 12 times is not a ridiculous idea.
Which if you use it for peer review, you'll do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So you'll have one student's paper posted in hypothesis with their partner or partners, and that's theirs.
yeah, okay,
Great idea.
yeah, that's a good idea, yeah.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, I would say if you want an assignment where you're wanting students to kind of find the thesis or find the conclusion or locate like structural moments in the reading, you can totally create a group set where students are split into groups of one. So they each have like their own private version of the document to annotate then, and they can't see anybody else's, finding of the thesis. I mean, I don't know that you'd want to do this every time necessarily, but that could be one way to give them their own document to annotate and find those structural moments within the article.
Or imagine 4 different articles. Each set of students finds one thesis, and then later you tell them to go look at the other articles where you can see the thesis that's been identified by those sets of 4 students. Cool. Lots of ways to do it.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
Absolutely.
Could you also, Jessica, have them hold their annotation as private until a certain time, and then they could all release them,
Sure.
post them to the class? So that might be a little harder if you have different.
I mean, you can
classes.
do that. So you can post privately only to yourself. And then students could go in and edit that and make it public. Sure. I don't know. Yeah, it would require, I guess, some coordination in that way, but yeah, certainly a possibility.
Thank you.
Let me quickly show how you would set up an assignment. I don't want to interfere too much on Brock and Jonathan's time here. So these are great questions though, so keep those coming. So within your, actually, I'm going to go, where did it go? Where did my folder go? I think something changed in here actually.
Is there something missing?
No, let's see, where did my folder go? Course tools, workshops. Oh, I know. So you want to make sure you're in edit mode. There you go. So the first step to adding a hypothesis assignment is make sure that you're in edit mode in your course. And if I go back into our folder, you're going to click on the tools menu and find hypothesis in the drop-down menu of your tools menu. So you're going to start by always going to tools and hypothesis. And this is going to give you some configuration options where you're going to create test assignment. Create your assignment here. We always recommend that you do post some instructions for students. We do find that the more specific you are and clear with them about how many annotations you want them to make and what kinds of annotations you want them to make, the more successful everyone is and the more kind of meaningful their annotations will likely turn out to be. So this space is for you to do that. You can either choose to make this for a grade or not. And so you would either click enable evaluation, yes or no, and then enter the amount of points possible here if you do want this to be a graded assignment. And you can also configure the due date, etc. here. Then you're going to click submit. And then you're going to actually click on your assignment again because you haven't quite finished configuring it yet. You're going to click on it here. And then you'll be presented with some options. So with hypothesis, again, you can annotate any public facing web page that's not behind a paywall and any PDF. And the PDF can live in your Blackboard files, in your Google Drive or your OneDrive, or we even do have a pilot with Vital Source here if it's a Vital Source text. So I'm going to click URL in this case. And I'm going to have my pretend students read a poem just because that's my discipline. Again, if you wanted to have your students read in small groups, here's where you could say, I want to use a group set. Well, actually, let's not do this right now. And then tell Blackboard which group set you want to use. For the purpose of this example, I'll just do a full class one and click continue. And then I have my poem that's a web page that lives on the Poetry Foundation website. And this is exactly what the web page looks like live. So just something to note, like if this web page changed, it would also change within my hypothesis assignment. So just be aware. If you're using a web page and there's a chance that it might be deleted or go away, I would actually encourage you to download it and use it as a PDF instead, just to make sure that it doesn't disappear on your students, since it is going to reference back to that live page. Any questions about that setup? I know that was fairly quick. Any questions?
Can I make that our university specific for just a second?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Not contradicting you, just trying to help a little more because I know the circumstances.
please.
And again, I'm sorry, I feel like I keep going back to time immemorial here. But did you know that the university is giving away all the basic Microsoft tools for your laptop? I mean, I still find this incredible that they didn't publicize it. So you can download Word, OneDrive, Teams, all that stuff for your laptop. And when that happened is when we got OneDrive. And so OneDrive for me is wonderful because I used to have to use my own Google Drive account to host all the PDFs. But now when you go OneDrive, you can just throw all your hypothesis stuff into OneDrive and it can live there, and you won't lose it from semester to semester when you lose access to, or when you have to redo your Blackboard course for the next semester. Cool. So make sure you do that. I recommend OneDrive. I mean, you might be using it for other stuff, but at least all those PDFs are going to be there. And the only thing I'll say is the way I tend to do it is I just have to make sure I have the PDF in OneDrive first before I do what Jessica just did. Because that's how you do it in 15 seconds, right? You just say, oh, I have all those documents that are ready. I can go assignment. And it takes no time whatsoever when it's that way. But if you get overwhelmed by the choices, it might take you longer. That's it.
Great. Thank you.
No worries. Sure.
All right, I'm actually going to turn it over to Brock next, but I do want to just let folks know there are some additional resources in this slide deck here, including just some ways you could consider annotating with students, some kind of activity ideas, including annotating your course syllabus, which can be a fun way to start out the term. And then at the end of the deck, there's a link. We do workshops every Tuesday at 10 a.m. that are totally free for anybody to join, so feel free to check those out if you want more ideas or are intrigued or would like to hear from folks at any other institutions about how they use hypothesis. So, all right, Brock, are you ready to take it away?
I'm ready.
Cool. I will stop sharing.
I will start sharing. Okay, so first I wanted to just kind of show you how I use it in the classroom. Talk about going from open educational resource textbooks to PDFs is kind of something that takes time because in order to put something into hypothesis, it's got to be in PDF or online. So if you're using an open educational resource like I do, you've got to download the print version of that open educational resource and then save the portion that you want to do within the reading assignment each week, and then have that ready when you create the hypothesis, just like Jonathan was just saying. So for me, I do one of these each week, and I provided this example of South Asia. So on the outside of it, I provide the learning objectives, which are to identify and describe aspects of physical and cultural geography in South Asia. So overall, what they're learning from this. I also take the opportunity to provide some alternative types of learning materials. So I'm really big on providing sets of learning materials that provide the same information in many different forums because people learn in different ways. So I put together this excellent set of YouTube videos that I borrowed from somewhere else. Someday I'll make my own, but I need a pay raise before then. And so that they have sets of learning materials that are beyond the reading because we are forcing them to read within the discipline of history. Sometimes that turns some students off because it is so reading heavy. And this allows them to build their reading skills by having sets of different types of learning materials, in my opinion. And I always do them graded. They're worth 30 points a piece. And so I have these 3 different sections that I want them to find within the reading and then provide an annotation for these 3 different topics. So for South Asia, that's the monsoon, early civilizations, and colonization. So what I'm going to do next semester is use the tags that Jessica was talking about so that each time a student does an annotation, they'll provide a tag of the monsoon so that I know that they're interacting with the parts of the document or answering the questions that I want them to answer. Does that kind of make sense? Anybody have any questions? Yeah, Emmett.
If the alternative is YouTube, a video, does the monsoon allow you, does the hypothesis allow you to do the highlighting and knowing that they're reading it such the same way as you would with text or only?
No, so I'm only grading their reading. So I'm providing these YouTube videos as a different type of a learning material so that students who have difficulties with reading can input the information from another source and then interact with the reading because they have trouble interacting with reading.
It's supplemental.
Supplemental, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Emmett. Thank you. Any others?
Are you in modules? Is this like a 1-week module you have up on the screen?
Yes, so I pulled out one of the 3 assignments that they get each week. So they have to do a hypothesis reading assignment. They have to do a discussion board where we delve into some topic a little bit deeper, and then use the awful discussion board within Blackboard. But that sets us up for in class, we ask that same discussion question in class. And I use it as a precursor so that I know every student sitting here has an answer to the question that I'm asking them, because in their assignment for the week, they were to answer that question. Does that kind of make sense?
It does, yeah.
And then a map quiz, but this is geography, and so we always have to have a map quiz. So within the folder itself, just like Jessica was saying, what any of this is, but I'm going to try it. Okay, so it ends up looking like this, and you'll see lots of annotations over here on the left. And then you can, so my biggest piece of advice is to always do them as graded assignments, because when I first learned about this, nobody told me that. So I had my TA keeping a spreadsheet and looking at all of the annotations and doing it all manually. And it took a lot of time on my TA's part. But then I figured out that you could do it as a graded assignment, and I assign them as 30 points. And so if you put in a 10 out of 10, that'll convert it to 30 points, if that makes sense.
Does that interact with Blackboard and the points that
Yes.
Blackboard does?
It does. So it'll always be out of 10, but you could have it out of 3 points, and it would reduce it down to that percentage. Yeah. And then all you got to do, if there were any students in here, you can click on each individual student and it'll pull up their specific annotations. And so you're only seeing that student's annotation. So you can grade them very quickly, one by one. And I think this adding of the tags of the specific topics that I want them to, or questions that I want them to answer, will make it even easier to grade. That makes sense? Yeah.
Sorry, one annotation per topic.
Yeah, that's how I have it set up. And I thought that was a little light on my part. So this semester, I'm going to add a 4th annotation. And when I started doing this, I kind of was coached by Jonathan, and then Judy Gahn, also within our history department, started using it. And she was using 4 interactions. I started with 3 because they had some other assignments, but I think only having 3 allowed them to read through 2 briefly. So I'm going to add that 4th topic this semester to get them to read a little more closely. But I'm starting with my open educational textbook, which is here. And you can download this textbook as a print PDF. And I won't do that now, but I keep a copy of that. and then I go to the particular chapters. So it's set up like this. So let's go ahead and go to South Asia. And it has a whole bunch about South Asia, but I'll usually just go to the introducing the realm section and choose. I found about 7 to 20 pages is what I like to do per week. I know that's a little light on the history side. We're usually doing 50, but on the geography side, they have other assignments. So I found 7 to 20 pages is what I really like to do. But at the end of the day, it's really based on which textbook you're using. So I usually just have them. So I will go to the PDF version of this section of the textbook, and then I'll save it as a PDF. And then I have to take that PDF, put it in my Google Drive, and then take that PDF from my Google Drive and then add it to Hypothesis. Jonathan, do you have a shortcut for that?
The textbook into your individual slices instead of sending the entire textbook over.
So you just do it as a URL, but how would I do
No, you
just?
won't do it as a URL, but I mean, so it's an OER, so you can download the whole textbook, but you can, mix, match, whatever. Then you get, the Adobe Acrobat and cut the URL into the sections that you're using. And then just put, I mean, it's going to be a little more work the first time you do it, but then it's going to save you and make it easier on your students for finding everything.
Yeah, I wish we had this conversation last semester.
Sorry.
Because I've already got all my PDFs set up, but yeah.
But I mean, you can see where I'm going, right?
Yeah, I see exactly where you're going. And I just wish I'd have learned this last semester, but thanks for telling me now.
Well, I mean, it just seems like an easier way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, Evan.
But you need to use Adobe Acrobat to do it?
You can do it. Yeah, I mean,
Is that available?
somewhere on this campus, there's a computer with Adobe Acrobat where they'll be glad to let you do it.
No.
But you can cut if you're using an open source textbook, there's no reason you can't cut it
No, no.
into pieces.
It's on my office computer. You're welcome to use it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you have to ask for it. I've been avoiding it.
So it's preloaded onto your computers now.
Is it?
And so all you have to do is then log in with your credentials.
Oh, that's wonderful. I did not even know that.
Can I ask you a related question?
Yes.
And I don't think this is too tangential. We have historians, geographers, philosophy, physical ed, we have political scientists here, and this might facilitate this. Last time I looked at OER textbooks in my area of international relations, they were not good. But it's been a while. So I'm guessing based on trends, they've improved. Are Allegria and Becky the people to talk to about that right now?
Yeah, I don't think they ever hired an OER coordinator.
I'm on the search committee for it right now.
Yeah.
I would talk to Allegria.
Yeah,
Because
Allegria.
I've been, so I think I'm technically on the OER committee. But yeah, I think she's been leading a lot of those efforts recently.
Okay.
So I would maybe reach out to her.
Yeah.
And she might have other contacts for you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about was using this for peer review. So and I wanted to just mention that, again, getting students to turn in their draft in a PDF form saved me, would have saved me a bunch of time because I didn't know that until the end. So this time around, I'm going to require everyone to turn in a PDF, and then so you would just take their PDF and turn it into. So what I would do for peer review is build a folder and then just do this test. And within the folder itself, and that one would be like peer review folder. So for each of the peer review people, and you always want to do enable evaluation, and then you can put in as many points as you want. I usually use 30 points, make it visible to students, due dates, all that stuff. And then hit submit here. Can add the test. We can add PDF from Blackboard. I think I put in that South Asia in there. And then you could do it as a group assignment if you wanted to, and just and this is how you would assign specific people. So you're putting in one student's draft, and then you would assign another student or two students who are the peer reviewer for it, and you could use that group to assign those students. Is that correct, Jessica?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. So with groups, basically what it would do is take one document and create like 4 different versions of it and assign each version to that group of students separately. For peer review, though, it sounds like what you're actually wanting is for different students to read different documents rather than the same document. Is that right?
Yes.
So in that case, I would think you actually would want to opt away from group sets and instead,
Just assign them here. So what I would
Yeah.
do is, so this would be, I shouldn't say it, test. So this would be student 1 and then assign student 2 here. And then just create this folder that has all of your students paired with a peer reviewer or a set of peer reviewers. And the cool part about this, and why I wanted to talk about this, is because I've been working with the Writing Center. And so this is a great way for both the peer reviewer, and if they take it to the Writing Center, they can go into their Blackboard, open up this hypothesis, and then the person that they're working with in the Writing Center can also put their comments within the same document. So within their draft, they've got annotations and page notes from me. They've got annotations from their peer review partner or partners, and then they've got annotations from the Writing Center all in one document. And I think that surprised me. So it worked really well for my weekly assignments, but this peer review aspect of it surprised me in how well it worked and how easy it was. One thing that I needed to do was put it a little further in the semester. And Steve and I had this conversation about 6 months ago, where start assigning parts of the research project earlier and earlier in the semester. And I'm getting to where I assign it on the first day, you know what I mean? So that you have time to do these things. So we're almost out of time, so I'm going to quit here unless anybody has any questions about this. Does that peer review kind of make sense? Yeah, Emmett.
The Writing Center person, can they get into Blackboard, or they come?
Their student will have to open up their own Blackboard. So the student's got to go to the Writing Center on either one of our computers or their own computer, open it up, and then allow the Writing Center representative to do that. So they won't have access to Blackboard. Yes.
So
Great question.
I do have one comment.
Yes.
Don't know that we only have 5 days to completely redo all of our classes with hypothesis before the semester starts, right?
That's what happened to me last semester. And so hopefully this is helpful, because I had Jonathan, and Jonathan's helped me a ton, and so has Judy. But some of this stuff, you just figure it out along the way, you know what I mean?
So this is gonna have to happen over the summer.
Yeah. And that's probably a good call, Steve, because 5 days, it's a lot. Yeah.
That's good.
I would urge you to like, just take a tiny little bit of it.
Just add.
For 2 reasons, like maybe with one assignment, just say, look, we're gonna do drafts for this one assignment on hypothesis.
Okay.
Just so that we can I can learn a little bit more about this.
So
Yeah,
peer
the
review
advantages
to
are-
start.
And I say this for 2 reasons. One is because I just think it's good to just dip your toe in for anything that you're trying to learn. But the other is, as Jessica knows, which is our contract is coming up before too long. And I just want everyone to use hypothesis, so there's no doubt that we renew it, because I don't know what the heck I'm going to do if we don't renew the hypothesis contract. And I have no reason to believe that we won't, but the more the merrier, right?
Yeah.
The more people you do it, the harder it's going to be not to, to suddenly decide that this is unnecessary, because it's very necessary, and I would just hate Blackboard without it. Can I just take over from here?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't have a presentation. I just wanted to just note, and some of what I would have said if I had one, I've already said. But I just want to note that the wonderful thing about hypothesis, it's an infinitely flexible tool. You know what the process is, but you can vary the writing. So, primary sources is one thing people put comments on, particularly if they're historians. Textbooks is something that people put comments on. Articles are something that people put comments on. As Brock was just pointing out, student writing itself is something that put people's comments on. And so you can put all that up, then under hypothesis, begin to have discussions break out on the page. You can also use hypothesis, God forbid, outside of Blackboard if you absolutely need to for any other reasons. For instance, like if we were just talking about this, if you wanted your project to stay up for a very long time, that requires students getting free accounts. But it's one of the things I did before we got the tool. It's one of the things I sort of have in my memory of things I can do. I'm a scalar person. I think Jessica's probably heard of that. This hypothesis embedded in scalar. So I've got comments in a million different places. It's just very hard for me. I mean, in my survey class, I'm using it in textbooks. In the upper level classes, I'm doing peer review. One of the things I just thought of, since Steve just told me that we now have access to Adobe, is you could actually put all of your, if you want to do it this way, if it helps for some reason, put all of your student drafts in one Adobe document, post that, and then it's going to be searchable. And it all depends on how you want to grade it or how you want to use it. It's just wonderful, because when you have an open source tool like this, you know, it's something that really empowers the professor to use it the way they want, rather than so much of the rest of Blackboard that sort of tells you how to use it, and you either can use it or just reject it. So you have this available to you in Blackboard. If you leave the university or go back to Peru, you have it available out in the wonderful world if you need it. It's a great thing, and you should all use it.
Agreed.
For assignment, if you, in assignment one, you put that whole textbook.
Yeah.
Tell them to annotate chapter 1. And then on the assignment 2, you put that same textbook and tell them to annotate chapter, the next chapter.
Yep.
Will they'll be able to see in the second assignment and going on all the annotations all the way through, because you're making it, are you making it to an instance in an assignment, or are you making it to the textbook?
Individual assignment. So they'll only within the South Asia chapter, you can only see South Asia annotations. Next chapter would be East Asia. And then that's a separate hypothesis, and they can only see the annotations from East Asia.
That's because you cut out chapter 9 and put it there.
Yes.
What I'm saying is, could you put the entire textbook in each time?
I do.
Oh, you do that?
I do that.
And do they see the annotations leading through?
Oh, well,
It's
it's the same textbook every semester. So they'll see, you know, they'll see the annotations in Blackboard from any time that semester,
Oh,
but then next semester you load it again.
yeah.
I mean, I think it's just important to note that the unit, I mean, I don't even know what to call it. I call it a hypothesis document.
Yeah.
Like you have this PDF, you put in a hypothesis, it gets the little H. And so you have to think about what your ideal unit is. Is it chapters? Is it sections of chapters? If you're Brock, is it the whole textbook? I mean, I think it just depends what questions you're going to ask, depending how you want to cut it. Anyway, it's good to know. If nothing else, I learned from this session that I can cut the textbook up, which I didn't think I could do beforehand.
So
Maybe this summer I might do the same thing.
So you're just putting in one hypothesis and they focus on chapter 1 and then they go back to the
They'll
same.
go through, yeah. Yeah, and then I can search inside the entire textbook and see that students' marks for the entire semester.
Okay. Did you find that confusing at all, like from a user perspective?
No, they know, I mean, it is a regular book. The assignment is described, you know, like chapter 7, right? So I'm using the units of the textbook itself.
But you can't have that graded if it's,
I am not using the numerical grades for that. My grading is just call up the student, count the number of hypothesis comments, and if it's, you know, comprehensible to me, check mark.
yeah, that might be good for you, Emmett. So if you do the whole book, then it would be hard to do them as graded assignments where you set up, like I did for 30 points for that one chapter. You would have to have a separate column in your grade book and keep track of the grades for each chapter.
This is beyond hypothesis, but for me, the great magic that made the Blackboard grade book palatable for me is the fact that you don't have to set letter grades in the grade book. You can just do check marks. And when I do that, then at the end of the semester, we talk about what the letter grade for all those check marks are going to be.
Oh, okay,
So and there's not everything has to be broken up into a number.
right.
So you just use-
I do not have everything, I do not have everything I hypothesis wired to the grade book, but I still use the grade book, but it's a counting thing. So it doesn't take very long, like, I see the comment, check mark.
Got it.
The thing I was trying to do was indeed the problem of having only 5 days
You're right.
or 7 days until we're up and running is to not spend it cutting up a textbook, but at least to.
If you
without-
put the textbook in and just look for comments, the key hypothesis I think would be to know that you can search for all student comments by the student's name.
Yeah.
And then all the comments will come up and you can just go, yes, yes, yes. And hopefully some of those will be replies and you can see that there too.
But
But yeah,
it's a way to use some of the magic without.
without having to like
Right.
completely overload. Yeah. No, the more I think about it, the more I think I'm gonna break up my textbook as well, now that I
Oh,
can do
yeah.
it. But I'm not gonna do it for this semester.
Right.
But I didn't know I had Adobe, so there you go.
And I just got a new computer in my office this morning, and they said it's there, all I have to do is log in. So,
Okay,
and it was on my old computer too, the icon was, so.
okay.
Yeah, I gotta say though, I couldn't recommend OneDrive enough for all of this. Just as a place to hold all of the documents that you want to hypothesis with.
Yeah, I think light bulb went off when you said that, so thank you.
Google is proprietary too.
Yeah,
If you
no,
put in-
it was a pain. And this is all moving everything to the web is a huge advantage.
As a grad student, I accidentally, I thought I was being helpful with my professor's data, and I moved all of our data over to Google Drive because we could share it and we could edit it at the exact same time, but it was publicly funded data. As soon as I moved it over there, Google owned the data.
Yeah.
Oh,
So Google,
Sure.
the Googleverse sucks. Avoid the Googleverse.
hypothesis not owned by Google.
Google owns everything. Are you sure? Are you sure?
Any other questions I can answer for folks? This is all great. Thank you, Brock and Jonathan.
Does hypothesis know how to translate from one language to another, by the way?
I like if you type in other languages, does it translate?
Or you wanted it to show up for a Spanish speaking student? Is there, no?
You know,
It's
no.
part of the language, so therefore, no. That's fine.
It does not translate. I mean, you can certainly type in whatever language you'd like, but yeah, no translation just yet.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Jessica,